Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have a really cool Jurassic World Dominion minifigure set here to take a look at today. And I first want to comment on how cool the packaging is. I absolutely love this kind of carrying case that they have included with a fantastic Jurassic World Dominion logo right there on the front. Like, that really sets the tone for this set. And then here on the back, you kind of have like a sneak peek of what is included. I really love the fact that Mattel had created something like this with this really cool case included. It's not something that I really remember them doing in the past. So that is really, really neat. I was quite impressed when this had arrived and I had realized what the packaging for it actually looked like. But you, of course, open it up, and then once you open it up, you've got all kinds of fun stuff inside. You can see that we have quite a few different dinosaurs associated with the set, and you also can see that we have like some fences and all that fun stuff. So let's pull all of this out, and then we've got all of this fun stuff, which, as you can see, is like a park fence with beautiful Jurassic logos right there. And you can see that we just kind of, well, maybe you can see. I'm not doing a good job of putting it together so far. There we go. So we kind of put it together, and it turns and articulates for you to position the fence however you would like. I love how much effort Mattel is putting into these new minifigures. Like, oh boy, I'm terrible at this, first of all. But we've had numerous play sets already when it comes to the minifigure line. And as you can quite clearly see, we now have even more of them, as we have this really cool kind of park set, which isn't really much of a play set, but it's still, I mean, it is, but it's not like there's like this really cool base to it or anything. And then we have all of it together. We've got all of the pieces, and you can completely enclose it if you would choose to, but I just feel like that's a very small space to put all of these dinosaurs in. However, I know there are more sets coming in the very near future that will have, I believe, more fences, so you could probably get a bigger park then. And you also have a little tree that goes into this very cool base that we have, and there's also another one of those bases over here. So we've got a lot of really fun stuff. We're not even going to attempt to stand all of those up yet before we go ahead and take a closer look. So let's just go ahead and do that right now. So we will begin with the dinosaurs, and the very first dinosaur that we have is the Atrocious Raptor. Now, this is definitely the same sculpt that we've had on the previous minifigure Atrocious Raptors, but there is a little bit of difference between this one and one that we've had that's very similar in the past. The one we had previously was included in the Mosasaurus Mayhem playset, and it looked pretty much like this, but this is the Atrocious Raptor from that set. Now, looking at these two, you can see, although they are similar, the tones of color are pretty much spot on. The coloration running along the back is a little bit different that you see on the newer one compared to the other one. Quite a bit of difference, I would say. And you can also see there's more paint apps on the head of the older one compared to the newer one. So although it looks pretty much the same and is very similar, it is also a little bit different from the previous version, but not enough that there's anything else that's really all that different to it. The other one in this set that also looks very similar to a previously released version is the Gallimimus. Now, this Gallimimus is again the same sculpt. There's no difference. This is the one in this set here currently. This is the minifigure in the main line of minis. You can see that the striping is different running along the back. It's also much darker on the older one. The striping runs up onto the neck on the older one. It does not on the newer one. There is a little bit of a speckling to it to add some extra color. And you can also see that the coloration on the mainline version runs a little further out onto the tail compared to the newer version. But the sculpt is the same. I also can see there's no eye paint on this one, which is kind of shocking. I guess since these are just kind of like a budget set, we have budget paint for them as well. Yeah, no eye paint on that side either. But the coloration is pretty cool because it kind of looks like a Jurassic Park Gallimimus, in my opinion, sort of, and has a slightly different color from the previous version, so it adds a little difference between the two. Now, we do have another Atrocious Raptor, and my camera doesn't want to focus on it, but you can see this one is definitely the same sculpt again, but a very different paint job. This time we have kind of like a yellowish tone for the body, and then we have like some squiggly brown stripes that run the course of the Atrocious Raptor to the hip region. So it starts in the neck area, leads out into the hip region, and then disappears, tapers off. There's not really too much other paintwork going on aside from like some dark blue speckles, and yet again we don't have eye paint, so these are kind of like basic versions of the minis, but it's still cool to have alternate versions, and especially a version of the Atrocious Raptors we haven't had yet with this one. And then we also have another Gallimimus, And again, my camera doesn't want to focus on it, but this time we have like a yellowish tone for the body, and we have a striping, a brown striping running along the back. Pretty much the same as far as the striping goes as to what we had just seen on the previous Gallimimus we were just taking a look at, where it ends before it reaches the tail and ends before it reaches the neck. But we again have a spotting type of a look to this one all throughout. Just no eye paint or anything, so pretty basic overall, but it is the same sculpt yet again as the previous Gallimimus, just a slightly different paint variant. Then we've got ourselves the Baryonyx, and the Baryonyx is, yes, definitely the same sculpt as the previous version, as the mainline version, but we do have some difference in coloration. So you can see that although they're basically the same, the coloration on the mainline version runs a little further out onto the tail than what we see on this newer version. They're just this kind of a little bit less as far as that bluish tone. We also have eyes painted out kind of like a yellowish green eye. We don't have that for the newer version. Similar coloration to the face, but you can see it designs a little differently. And just in general, it kind of designs a little differently, leading down into the body slightly, but not too far off, a fairly similar looking version of the Baryonyx. So sculpt is definitely the same. You can see it's the exact same sculpt. It's neat to have different slight paint variants like this. Personally, I actually really quite like this. Now here is a sculpt that is entirely different from the mainline version of the Dominion minis with the T-Rex. And you can see that again we have basically like your basic paint apps for it, as we have a very dark brown bordering almost on a black that runs along the top of the Rex leading out into the tail. And then, of course, kind of like a chocolate brown for the majority of the body. We don't have any other paintwork for it at all that I can notice. I kind of see like some speckling to it here and there, like you see on most Mattel figures. But the sculpt, I think, might be the same as the older one. So here is the older Mattel Mini, and yeah, definitely looks the same to me. So this is an older, I believe, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom minifigure T-Rex. So we have that same Rex now re-released in the Dominion line, with actually a pretty nice paint app. If it had eye paint and teeth paint and stuff like that, it would look really nice. I like the tones that they've used for it. But again, it's now more of like that flexible, rubbery type of feel. So it's a different material from the older one, but it is the same sculpt, just with a different paint app. And now the one that is an entirely new sculpt in this set is the Therizenosaurus. This is definitely a different Therizenosaurus compared to the previously released mainline version. So here's the more mainline version. You can see, first of all, we have way better paint apps on the mainline version, but you could see an entirely different sculpt. We have the mouth in an open position on the newer one. The arms are articulated on the older one. They are not articulated on the newer one. The body itself kind of looks like it's similar. The leg positioning looks the same. The tail positioning almost looks the same. The coloration is similar, but you can see a brighter red on the back of the newer Therizinosaurus, but we have an entirely different sculpt from the neck up and the arms as well. I don't know if they're the... Yeah, definitely a little different when it comes to the sculpting of the arms. So although similar, it is a little bit different. If we get nice and close, you can see that as far as the detail goes, it is extremely nicely done, as you always find when it comes to a Mattel figure. And I actually think I like this Therizinosaurus sculpt a little better than the older one, just because it has that really cool kind of dynamic look to the mouth being open and everything. I would love to repaint this, but I don't really want to rebuy the entire set just to get this figure. So I'll hope that at some point in the future they re-release this one in another set where I can buy it and kind of get a second one of this. But definitely a nice sculpt. Really basic paint, not all that great as far as the paint apps go, but it's cool to have a very different variant of the Therizenosaurus included in the minifigure line as well. And then you've got yourself this really cool kind of like a base where you have some really nice dinosaur footprints, quite a bit of different footprints as well. You have some nice vegetation sculpted out, really nice earthy area with some rocks and stuff. You can see a little peg there for you to apply to the underside of the feet of your dinosaurs, because the Mattel Minis all now have these kind of like peg holes on the undersides of the feet, so you can stand them up on the different sets, like the play sets, and now with these little bases. And you can see that it's basically just a greenish coloration, and you also have a really cool kind of like a pine tree here. Nicely sculpted, nothing really all that flashy or great, but a pretty cool little addition. And then you also have, yet again, another base. Same deal, we could have applied the tree to this one. I think it looks exactly the same. Yeah, definitely the same base as what we had just seen with that previous version. And then, of course, we have the fences here for our little paddocks that you can create, and you can see that it's just basically a light gray pretty nicely detailed, but not overly detailed, nothing crazy or incredible. You can see they all connect very nicely, and although it's not anything groundbreaking or amazing, I absolutely love the fact that Mattel is releasing this kind of stuff. So much effort going into the minifigure line now with these newer Dominion minis, and I love the fact that we kind of are getting like these play sets where we can create our own parks, even though I obviously won't be playing with them, but they would be absolutely awesome. First of all, for any kid that wants to play with them, but also awesome for dioramas, dinosaur toy photography. There is no limits when it comes to how cool these really cool sets are, and the fact that we now have a really neat fence and everything is awesome. And of course you have these little peg holes where you can kind of put your dinosaur, install him in here, and he attaches really nicely. You can see nice and stable to help them stand if you would like them to stand on here. I think I would put the Therizenosaurus on here as the other one, just because, well, let's get a good spot for him to stand in. Just because that's a important factor in the Dominion film would be the Therizenosaurus. But we also have, again, our other dinosaurs that are included in this set, which we have quite a few here. Awesome Atrocious Raptors, Gallimimus, and then, of course, another Gallimimus. And you can see that for some reason, the Gallimimus are like the only minifigures I always have a problem with when it comes to standing. They just don't want to balance, but all the other ones do stand pretty nicely. I don't feel like we really need to measure them very much. I will hold the tape over here just to show you, but at this point into the Dominion line, you probably have a decent idea, I would imagine, of the size of the minis. But for a size comparison, just to show you, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our minifigures here. And let me move it back just a little bit to help give you an idea of the size, but you can definitely see that when it comes to minifigures, that is no lie. They are definitely minis, and they are quite small, and I would like to think you can really see that, especially in comparison to Muldoon, which the human figures from the Mattel Jurassic World line are fairly small, but the minifigures here are way, way smaller. So this minifigure set from Mattel is another really cool set, and I am so psyched again to see so much effort going into the minifigures. I've been a huge fan of the minis from Mattel ever since they had began, since Mattel acquired the license for Jurassic World. I've always been a huge supporter of the minifigures. However, at the end of Mattel line there prior to Dominion, they kind of got boring because they were basically just releasing the same figures. Sometimes we'd get a slight paint variant, but it would be pretty rare even when we get that. Most of the time we get like all repacks and one metallic figure. However, now with the Dominion line, there's just so much more happening with the minifigures. They have completely revamped the entire minifigure line, including brand new material used for the figures, brand new sizes for the figures, and of course lots of brand new species. And this set here is really cool just because we have two different Atrocious Raptors, one of which we have kind of had in the past but slightly different paint, and one we definitely haven't had up until this point, so introducing another one of the Atrocious Raptors here into our collections. We also have two more Gallimimus, which are also different from the previously released versions, so we're already off to a good start when it comes to creating a flock of Gallimimus for your collections. We also have a Baryonyx, which as well sports a slightly different look compared to the previously released Baryonyx, and all of these are fantastic sculpts, that's for sure. And then we have the T-Rex, which is a reused sculpt from the older ones, but it's the first time we've had this version of it in the newer Dominion line, and a pretty nice looking paint job, but even though there's really only two tones of color to it, but I like the tones they've used on it. Probably one of the nicer Mattel mini Tyrannosaurs, I think. And then you have the Therizenosaurus, which is definitely different from the previously released version. Very different coloration, but also an altered sculpt with a different head and neck and also different arms. So really cool sets here. You also have the bases with the tree and the vegetation and all that stuff to kind of give your dinosaurs an area to stand. And then the fence is like the coolest thing I think about this set overall, because you now have the ability to kind of create a paddock for your dinosaurs. That will definitely be a great addition to anybody that is taking dinosaur toy photography with either these Mattel minis or even the Toy Monster International captives. One way or another, this is an awesome set. I am definitely psyched about it and cannot wait to see what other sets they produce for the minifigure line in the very near future. So if you are interested in this, I will include a link in the description to where I purchased this on Big Bad Toy Store. So make sure you check that link, pick this set up if you are interested, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.